Hail, adventurer! I'm Nedrick Ironheart. You do look familiar. An explorer by trade and a scion by allegiance, and you, my friend, took me, an adventurer, in need of a challenge? I happen to know just the place that will offer it to you. Tucked away, in the corner of eastern Thanalan, lies Halitali, and it is there that you will find all the excitement you crave. The place boasts of a storied history. It was built some 100 years past as a training ground for gladiators. The calamity laid ruin to it, though, as it did to most things. Now Halitali is a shadow of its former self. But in the dark of that shadow lurk wild beasts, both bloodthirsty and beyond count. For one such as yourself, I dare say there is no place finer than Halitali to test your skills and refine your technique. Indeed, I've taken the liberty of passing your name along to the Flames, who oversee the place. Should you visit, speak to one Fafayoni near the entryway. You know, this idea that the monsters are beyond count is the kind of attitude that causes you guys to be lazy about map making. Alright. That's exactly the kind of attitude that got you guys in this mix in the first place. What are you standing like that for? If it is the halls of Halitali you seek, you need seek no further. Permit me to tell you something of this place. The name comes from an ancient tongue. Halitali meaning, of course, the land of many shadows. It was here that our distant ancestors first settled, and... you have not come all this way for a lesson in history. Yes, I have. Shh! Now listen. Do you hear the howls and the growls? Do you not feel how they shake the very earth beneath you? Those sounds are the work of no wind, my friend, nor the rumbling, the doing of any shadows. Those are the halls of Halitali. For now the beasts once kept for the Colosseum lurk here. And these are no gentle beasts broken by the hand of man, no. There are those within even the might of the immortal flames cannot tame. Oh, from the look of you, you must be Meteor. I've received word from Nedrick that you might be along. By his recommendation, I grant you leave to enter freely. I only pray that you are able to find your way out. We just had like 3 separate conversations. He started as like a historian, then said, you don't want that. Then he told us like a scary story. Then he went through and introduced himself. You need to chill, man. Here we go. Halitali. Eat some raisins, bud. And throw on stance. Yes! Look at that. Alright, we got a first-time healer. And we got a tank without a job stone. Okay. I don't know that I have to kill those. And if I don't have to kill those, I would say let's not kill them. They don't grant experience, except that I need them for my hunt log. So let's go grab them. Let's commit these people to finishing my hunt log for me. It's possible that later in the dungeon they would complete, but I don't want to come back. Do I have... Doing great. Alright. And then we move on. Yeah, they're doing great. Have I tried ESO? I think they just got an expansion. I did. I played on launch. It's a drastically different game than it is on launch. But I haven't been back. I played ESO all the way to level cap, but it worked a lot differently back then. And what separated me was back then, I joined with a group of friends, and me and my brother both got to cap, and many of them were not anywhere close to cap. And it separated us. Like, there was no easy way for us to do anything with them. As a matter of fact, a lot of the content, it penalized them for us to come along, and we were not getting anything from it. So it basically meant that on these, like, game nights that we would all hop into voice chat and play, my brother and I had to kind of, like, either be quiet or, like, move into our own chat. Because, like, they were all running stuff as a group, and we got totally sectioned off. They've since fixed that, but I just haven't been back. Alright. It's some of my favorite PvP within all MMOs. Alongside, like, ESO, EVE Online. So what it was I play games every Wednesday night with a group of friends from college. And we span a couple generations. So Brian and his brother play, and then they have some friends that they played games with over the years and gone to college with that play. And then me and my younger brothers play, and we've brought friends along. And so, like, it's this group of people who all know each other in real life, like, out in the world. We all know each other because of, but, like, college and siblings is kind of how everybody's there. So we've all, like, the group goes skiing together in February and stuff like that. So we've hung out a lot. And so every Wednesday we play games. And eventually a game kind of wears out its welcome. And so it's like, okay, well, what do we play next? Right? So we used to do it democratically. Now me and one of my brothers basically kind of present the option, and people basically say yes or no to it. But it used to be everybody nominate games, and then we'll all vote. And all nominations will get equal merit. That's not really how it's done now, directly because of ESO. So me and my brother research games, and we read reviews, and we read about it, and maybe we've played them, and that tells us about the type of gameplay. Oh, I can turn that off since we're not doing Omni today. How long have I been ahead of Brian? Like 2 weeks, like a week. A week or so. Yeah. So so we were looking at games, and now me and my brother vet games to decide if they're going to be a game that's going to break apart the group, because ESO did, like, permanent damage. We lost people to ESO that didn't come back to our kind of Wednesday night thing for well over a year. So at the time, we had, like, first-person shooter, and I think, like, a racing game, and another first-person shooter, and ESO were, like, the 4 games being voted on. And we were coming out of a first-person shooter. And the reason we like first-person shooters is that they're really easy to pick up. You just hop in, you get handed a gun, and that's it. And, like, if you're good or bad at Halo, it doesn't matter, because the group is big enough. We have, like, 8 to 10 people every Wednesday night, that we're filling lobbies, private lobbies. And so because we fill private lobbies, like, we'll just balance the teams. So if there's 2 really good people, we'll split them up. If there's 2 really bad people, we'll split them up. Like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how good and bad anybody is at the game. We'll balance it so that everybody has a good time. And as people improve or have good or bad nights, maybe they've had stuff to drink, or they're just kind of off a little bit, we just adjust the balance so that the teams are about 50-50, and we have some close matches, and we don't really keep, like, a score or anything. It's just to have a good time, talk a little trash, keep up with each other. The same way that, like, if we all lived in the same city, you might get together for, like, a board game night, but we're all over the country. So we've tried having people who, like, live abroad that are friends of the group play, like my brother-in-law when he lived in Romania. The ping was just too bad. But I like first-person shooters for that, or like Rocket League, because you don't need skill level. And if you show up late, or you get it, or you have to leave early, it doesn't matter. As opposed to, we've tried like RTSs over the years, like Age of Empires and stuff. The matches are too long. So if you show up a little bit late, you've missed us, and it's going to be an hour. And if you have to leave early, it kind of screws people up, especially if we're playing on teams. So ESO got tossed in, and they asked what ESO was. And I think Brian and I were trying it out at the time. And so Brian kind of described what it was. And they thought, wow. But like, you guys know Brian. He described it as like this huge open world where you can invest in your character and go on adventures. And like, it's all positive things. It's why we love Brian. So they went to vote on it, and the group was split. And basically, the vote split where everybody in the group who'd ever played an MMO voted against it because they said, well, what it's described as is true. As I've thought about it, I don't think it's a good fit for this group because we talked about it for several weeks before we had the vote, and as we talked about it, a lot of people were like, well, what would it take to get invested? And in an MMO, like if you're going to play an MMO with a group of friends, you really all need to commit during the first month to play a lot. Now, after the first month, maybe you can settle down and we just play together every Wednesday. Like if everybody was caught up on MSQ and Final Fantasy XIV, Game Night started as a Final Fantasy XIV group. That's what it initially started at. My brothers, Brian, like it was initially a smaller group, and we played Final Fantasy XIV every week. That's what started Game Night. Back in ARR. Is we needed a chance, we needed a organized night that we were all going to be online so that we could take on like 8-man trials and stuff and help each other with Relic and all that. So that's what it started as. So we were well aware that like, yeah, once you're caught up, Game Night is a great fit for an MMO, especially an MMO like Final Fantasy that really doesn't care if you only log on once a week. It doesn't. But the buy-in to Final Fantasy XIV, even during ARR, was still like 80 hours. Now it's 300 hours. So you really need to plan to play 10 or 20 hours a week for like a month, and then we can switch to just playing once a week. And as we got to talking to everybody, the people who did not do MMOs were like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to like exploring this new world. I'll probably log on at like 8 or 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, and then play until like 10 or 11. So you're gonna play like 2 or 3 hours a week?
Guys, what is the deal with less than vendor?
You're gonna play 2 or 3 hours a week. That's it. Like, you'll never catch up. You'll never, ever, ever catch up. If you play Final Fantasy XIV 2 or 3 hours a week, I know that sounds like a lot to people that don't game, but the average gamer plays 6 to 7 hours of games a week, and I would still say it's going to take you a year to catch up with A Realm Reborn. And at this point, we've now added Heavensward, Stormblood, and Shadowbringers. They've accelerated them, but at 6 hours a week, you're still looking at a year. Which is crazy. It's crazy like Farmer Girl gifting a sub to Jace. It's insane. And so, as MMO veterans, as these people that are like, hey, I've never played an MMO, I'm really looking forward to it. I'll probably play like, maybe like 2 or 3 hours a week. We were like, okay, well, thank you for letting me know. I'm going to vote against ESO. I think you don't know you don't know what you don't know. And you're getting yourself in a world of hurt. And so it's my job to vote against you. I think I would enjoy ESO, but I don't think you would. And so I'm going to vote against it to make sure that we don't end up in it. So we all vote, and the way it votes is you basically put the 4 or 5 games or whatever it was in order, and you tally them in order, and then that way so there's a voting method where it's not just binary which one got the most votes, but like if everybody picks the same game as our second favorite game, that should win. So everybody puts in their votes, and the number of people who have not played an MMO is larger than the number of people who recognize that this is not a good fit. So, this is a lot shorter than it was. So, ESO is like the #1 or #2 game for all the non-MMO players. And so the MMO players all pushing it down to their 4 or 5 spot. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's not enough of us. So ESO crushes the vote. Just sweeping. Like this big monstrous ogre just coming in like, rah! Right? Okay. So we charge in to take on ESO like we're charging into Tengata here. Right? ESO was a new MMO at the time. Brian and I had just gotten it with, like, right before the nominations went out. It had, like, just come out. So, I wasn't... There we go. Take these on. And so, what do? Well, if we're going to play an MMO, I'm going to do it. So we said we're going to play it as our game night game. I thought, alright, well then let's do it. So me and one of my brothers take it on. My brothers and I bonded over games growing up. That's what we did, and especially World of Warcraft. And so we did what we would have done with World of Warcraft, or what we had already done with both World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy. We went hard. So the first weeks, we played 20, 30 hours a week. And we did that every week for the first, I don't know, month. And people are like, oh my gosh, you guys are playing so much. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you do. You get to cap. You get to cap, you get to cap, you get to cap, you get to cap. Now what's your cap? Yeah. Let's just play casually. It's no big deal. They don't come out with patch content that fast, you know? A lot of times patch content is 8 to 10 hours of content. And so you don't want to play 30 hours a week because you'll get through the patch content too fast because it's going to be several months till there's more patch content. So you should only play 4 to 8 hours a week once you're caught up, unless you're doing like hardcore raiding or something where there's like a progression aspect. Or there's some grind, something like the relic weapons, for example. But for just like clearing story, beating dungeons for the first time, take your time once you're caught up. So we just charge on, you know? I'm level 23. Oh man, I'm level 20. I'm going to catch you tonight. Well, now I'm level 25. Crap, now I got to catch you. And we're just back and forth, all the way to cap. And so we get around, so the first night we all log in at the same time and they quickly realize, oh, we can't play together because like the beginning of the game is all about playing separate. 69, nice. So, so the first week is just us in chat explaining what an MMO is to all these people that voted for it and are like, wait, what? And we're like, yeah, that's what we tried to tell you. And no, that's fine, because we'll all get to like level whatever, and we'll all join each other for like the first dungeon type content, you know, these open world like exploration cave things. We'll all do that together next week. Sure. So next week rolls around, and my brother and I have already played like 30 hours or whatever. So we're miles ahead of everybody. And they're like, whoa, how do you have all that? Well, not only are we 30 hours in the future, but like the people who've never played MMOs are like doing one task at a time. They're like picking up a quest from a quest giver that has 5 quests, and then they're like running out and they're like fighting the 5 boars, and between each boar, metaphorically, they're like eating food and taking a break, and they're reading all the tooltips, and then they're running back. So they're completing like one task per play session. So even the ones who said, you know what, you're right, just while we get settled, I'm gonna also play on like Fridays or Saturdays. It doesn't matter because like all of us MMO players can do in an hour what's gonna take them a whole night. So 30 hours of optimal MMO exploration versus new player 3 to 5 hours a week, we are just miles ahead. So by the time we hit cap, many of them are not even halfway to cap, and the first half is not as long as the second half. So that's a huge portion of what's defined my experience with ESO. Is that those people then got really mad that the game wasn't fun. And several of them quit coming to game night. They didn't want to be told I told you so. They didn't want, when they said, how do I fix it? And we said, you got to play 40 hours. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. So they just quit.